Hi, people. This is Mike Williamson. Thanks for stopping by. Today's date is October 30th, 2018. In the previous episode, episode 2, we talked about full disclosure. And I would like to give a little bit of self-disclosure at this time. Jewel and I have been married for over 40 years, and we only knew each other for, I don't know, 4 or 5 months before we got married. I had been married before. She had been married for 10 years before, and I had been married for a couple of years when I was 19 and quickly divorced. Neither one of us were Christians at the time. But the thing I want to point out is in our premarital workbook, Building Your Marriage Upon the Rock, we highly suggest that you take a lot of time getting to know your fiance in a much deeper level in this whole process of deciding to get married. 4 months is not adequate time. And besides that, we didn't have any premarital counseling. We didn't have anybody in our lives to explore our situations, our readiness for marriage, or anything. We just decided to get married, and the church that we were attending at the time said, okay, that's cool. And there was very little in the sense of premarital counseling and ferreting out some of the issues in our lives that would have been a great hindrance to a godly marriage. So what I'm saying is, I don't want to be a hypocrite, but I want to say, do as I say, don't do as I did. We were just ignorant of this stuff. There was, at that time in our lives, back in the mid-70s, we just took it for granted that, hey, if you want to get married, that's cool. You love each other, that's great. When's the wedding date? That's basically the way it was. We were not involved in a church that really seriously looked at marriage in the view that this is God's deal and it's God's business. It was just a deal between the man and the woman. If it's like secular, really. It's just a shade better than secular marriages with a Christian religious twist to it. There was no emphasis on the fact that marriage is God's covenant. Even though that I had that in my mind, I knew that this was a covenant and that I was going to do this for life no matter what. I had that going for it. So did my wife. We both had that going for us. But boy, oh boy, we were not. I have to admit, I have to confess, we were not candidates for marriage. I certainly wasn't a candidate for marriage or for a good, godly marriage. It's one thing to stay married for 40 years. It's another thing to have a godly marriage that's really, truly glorifying God all those years. People can stay married for 40, 50 years, and basically they're just enduring each other. Well, that wasn't our case, but all I'm saying is that I was not a good candidate for marriage at that time. Stuff in my life that continued to be a problem in our marriage for many years was never dealt with when I first came to the Lord. And that's a whole different subject that I get into in in a different podcast category about the state of the church, the state of Christianity, the false, phony, shallow conversions that are happening, that are rampant in the church. And certainly that is the first thing that we discuss in our premarital workbook. The first chapter is on each person's relationship, individual relationship to God, what kind of a Christian they are, how deeply committed they are to Christ, and whether it's just a Sunday deal, a religious thing that they put on, or where they've been deeply convicted by the Holy Spirit of their sinfulness, of antagonism towards God that they are in before they become a Christian. In the Bible, in the New Testament, it says that we were enemies of God, and God has reconciled us to himself through his Son Jesus, through his death on the cross. Well, how deep is that reconciling in each person's life? Very important. Each person's relationship to God is the most important and the absolute first thing that needs to be covered in premarital counseling. And by the way, these podcasts that I'm doing are not in any particular order. Very important things that should be talked about first might be talked about in episodes way down the line, because this is just random. I don't have a prepared outline or a plan that I'm going through. I'm just saying these things as they come to mind, bits and pieces. But certainly your relationship with God and what that means, your brand of Christianity is the most important thing to consider when you're getting married, because if the two of you are not on the same page with your spiritual life and your spiritual condition and your commitment to Christ, if one of you's full-blown, all-the-way Christian who loves the Lord and is just, that's just their, you're just into it 100%, and the other person is just kind of, well, nominal, or, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll go to church with you, but it's not really their thing deep in their heart, but they can handle it, they can put up with it, and so you think, well, okay, we're a good match. You're not a good match. If you're not both spiritually on the same page. I believe I think it's in Amos, chapter 3, I believe, where it says, how can two walk together unless they be agreed? And this brings up the subject of compatibility, which I'll probably launch into in the next episode as I'm kind of rambling now. Compatibility, first, of course, like I just said, is foremost in your individual relationships to God. Are you compatible? Are you in the same spiritual framework? Are you both of the same mind when it comes to doctrines and things like that? If one of you is a charismatic and the other one of you is a non-charismatic, that's there's going to be problems. You're not going to be able to fellowship in a deeper, more meaningful way. Well, maybe you can, but it might be limited a little bit. It might be stunted a little bit. Your spiritual growth. It's very important. The compatibility in your Christianity is the supreme thing. And then you get into the compatibility of your earthly life, your compatibility in things that might seem trivial, but end up being big matters. Well, we'll probably get into compatibility issues in the next episode. So until then, thanks for listening. God's grace and His mercy and His peace be upon you. Hello again, people. I hope this has been helpful for you. And if it has, would you do me the favor of clicking the like button and sharing this on your various social media platforms, and also by subscribing to receive notices of future podcasts. That would help a lot, and I'd greatly appreciate it. Thanks again.